Earlier today, Motive Studios had a live stream presentation where they were talking about the ins and outs of the Dead Space remake. They covered all sorts of topics, how it looks, what they're working on, the different quality of life improvements that they're bringing in from other titles in the franchise. Overall, there were a lot of things that were covered, but these are my favorite things that got me most excited for the Dead Space remake. Now, if you like content like this, give us a thumbs up and subscribe to the channel to stay up to date. Guys, let's talk about some Dead Space Remake.
2GR.
First and foremost, Isaac Clarke is going to be fully voiced. Gunnar Wright has actually gone and reprised his role as Isaac Clarke. This is, of course, awesome, exciting, and something that I welcome with open arms. His performance in Dead Space 2 and 3 were top-notch. Isaac is Gunnar Wright, so I look forward to seeing him and how he will do in the remake. There are, though, specific rules that the developers are sticking with when it comes to Isaac actually talking. For example, number 1, Isaac will primarily only speak when spoken to, and number 2, Isaac will sometimes speak in a situation where it would feel weird if he remained silent. I'm not really too worried about number 1. I think that it's totally acceptable. I think that longtime fans are used to Isaac talking, though he didn't in the first game. Having a silent protagonist is perfectly fine. A lot of games in general have silent protagonists. I just hope that they don't go overboard. With the rule number 2, things can definitely get weird, and this is really what I'm talking about. The way I see it is that Isaac will really only talk with NPCs or possibly after a huge battle or maybe some altercation. I don't really think they'll go too far with it, and honestly, I hope that they don't. They did mention, though, that they're trying to keep the atmosphere core with Isaac being quiet in long corridors and in other areas where it's just him by himself. Obviously, this is to help build the tension and the atmosphere and its setting. It makes sense. Isaac will interact with NPCs. With Isaac being fully voiced, they mentioned that he will interact more with NPCs and be a part of the discussion on what's actually moving the story forward. This will be interesting because in the original, you were essentially told what to do and really didn't have a say in the matter. Having him be more involved would help flesh him out as a character and possibly some NPCs as well. And this kind of ties into going into detail with Nicole's story. This is where things honestly can get very interesting. For longtime fans, we know that the main reason why Isaac went to the Ishimura was because of his wife. He wanted to make sure that she was all right. And even though he was being told to continuously fix things or go to places, the main reason for him even agreeing to be there was because of her. Throughout the time in the original, Isaac rarely actually went out of his way to search for his wife, if at all. So I'm definitely intrigued to see what they're going to do to dive deeper into Nicole's story and the events that eventually led to her being the way that she was when Isaac finally found her. Seeing improved necromorph details is great. This was something that I initially missed during the reaction, and looking at the presentation on my monitor and on my screen, it seemed like they were showing necromorphs that didn't necessarily look any better than they did in the original. I was 100% wrong. Some of the details weren't apparent, and I was looking at things skin deep. There were a bunch of details that were there, which makes sense. Dealing with necromorphs is going to be the biggest thing that we're going to be doing in this game. Might as well make them look as good as possible, right? But there's actually more to it. There's a whole other aspect. The way that the flesh, muscles, and bones interact with different weapons also comes into play. The plasma cutter and the rifle have 2 different effects on the necromorphs. It seems like there's plans for hanging limbs that can be used with kinesis to fight back, which can definitely add an interesting dynamic. Overall, though, the anatomy of the necromorphs and how we're going to handle them is honestly a work of art. Kudos to the team because I think that sincerely they're doing a really good job to go above and beyond the original. This is probably one of the biggest things, especially coming from EA. No microtransactions. This is something that, in my opinion, was one of the biggest factors that killed the franchise. It was just so insane seeing the amount of transactions that were in the second as well as the third game. The developers were straight up asked if the game was going to have a microtransaction system or any form of microtransactions, and they said no. Although I personally think that this is something that EA has more of a decision on and not necessarily the studio, I'm still excited to see them say that. I truly hope that EA has learned with Jedi Fallen Order and the success that that game had with Respawn. A little bonus tidbit, a little something. I kind of wanted to go ahead and throw this in here as well, but damn, does this game look good. I know it's early and I know that everything needs to be taken with a grain of salt. We don't even know if this is how it's going to look like in the final build. The differences between the original and this remake are so vast though. Like, they're huge enough to make Dead Space look and feel like a new game. So it's ridiculously exciting to see. Honestly, guys, seeing all this stuff is ridiculously exciting for me. And the more that I think about it, the more that I kind of just let that ooze in my brain. Like, it's exciting. Unfortunately, I don't think that we're going to see this game for maybe 4 or 5-ish years tops. And that's okay. I'm okay with letting it bake. As I mentioned in my reaction, I think that they kind of showed it a little bit too earlier, too soon. I'm just glad that it's in the works though. This is something that I didn't think was ever going to happen. I didn't think that EA was ever going to revive this franchise, and this is a good way for it to be rebooted and kind of seeing what else can happen in Isaac Clarke's adventure. I hope that this game is successful, and I hope that we see more iterations in the franchise in the future. If you guys saw the reaction or if you guys saw the live presentation, were there any specific aspects or things that they talked about that really stuck out to you? Let me know in the comments below. Obviously, like, comment, subscribe, the YouTube stuff, and I will see you on the next one, guys. Deuces.
Hope you enjoyed the video. If you want to see more and stay up to date, subscribe, hit the little bell, and join our Discord.
If you want to support the channel, please check out our Patreon or hit the join button below. As always, thanks for your support and thanks for watching.